Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome to the final research episode, before we finish off the last two bases belonging to the White Flyers and the Lightning Hoods, and we move on to a brand new campaign. Now, I feel like we should have done this earlier. This is a massively requested thing for me to have a go at, and so I do apologise for how long it's took for me to finally try one of these out. So this is very similar to how the Twin Guard work. Essentially, it's two vehicles acting as one. The top vehicle right now, obviously just a little test vehicle, you can tell by how much ammunition it has, is simply put a giant turret. It's going to be very heavily armoured, and currently it has two 1400 RPM cannons. It's very powerful, it's very basic, and most importantly, it has a ridiculously quick turning speed, because it's actually attached to this little turret here, which is simply put a missile controller to help with aiming, and a tractor beam being controlled by this local weapon controller. And isn't it weird when you completely remove this weapon? This hull space looks so very empty. We are going to be using the Abaddon as the ground vehicle to hold the other vehicle, but this is obviously just a test version, so let's just showcase its biggest strength, the turning speed of the turret.
Gunnery enabled.
As you can see, very quick, it then aims, and then, in a very satisfying manner, destroys that. Admit it, that's easily one of the most satisfying buildings to destroy ever, and that is this, from the Dustwind Gypsies. I just spawned in another one somewhere. There it is. Of course, the other strength to this design is that the ground vehicle can repair the top vehicle, but sadly, with how repair tentacles have been updated, the top vehicle can no longer hold the parent vehicle, the main vehicle, as I believe this counts as the sub-vehicle, but I will probably just refer to it as the turret, because that's exactly what it's going to be. We are going to be using the Abaddon because it's just the perfect example of one of these ground vehicles. It's slow, it's very heavily armoured, and all of the volume is going into defence and none into weaponry. And because it used to have a weapon which had 600 volume, that 600 volume can now be used for either defence lasers or anti-laser defences in the form of smoke dispensers, or of course just more armour, and the inside will be riddled with repair tentacles to heal the turret. If all goes well, this will probably be the most powerful vehicle we have. It will have more firepower than the Bloodletter, and it will have more defense than the regular Abaddon. It will have 4,000 volume combined, and it's going to butcher every single thing it sees. It will probably even have missiles, and yes, I know, this is ridiculously overpowered. This is why I have left this so long before finally messing around with it. Everything else was already a bit overpowered. This is taking it to a brand new level. So I'll be right back once I've done some work. Corn cares not from where the blood flows, only that it does. Well done, Turret. Your first suicide. Testing out the repair capabilities of the Abaddon with repair tentacles. And it's very quick. Totally worth killing itself with missiles. Well done.
Gunnery enabled.
Okay, that was better. Little swarm of missiles going towards the target. Sadly, the target is long dead before it gets there, but you get the general idea. Lots of damage done in one short burst. Okay, let's work on that. didn't expect that, but there we are. The vehicle, whilst half done, can already solo the chaos. And yes, we are going to make this stronger. Because that's what I want to do today. No more worrying at all, even in the slightest, about balance. Today, we design the end vehicle. The vehicle which will devastate the land and the forces of both of our enemies. And this is that vehicle. The Skarbrand. Okay, a change of plan when it comes to the missiles. What I think I'm going to do is remove this back section here, and then add 2 missile silos. This way, we could add a load of the ejector add-ons, these lovely things here, and have the missiles go very, very high up into the air. And then if we use the short range thrusters rather than the variable, we can have them start mid-air and then go towards the target rather than them being active as soon as the missile is launched. The biggest benefit to this is that the missiles will then rain down on the enemy rather than hitting their front, and hopefully get around a lot of the front protections of the craft. When I just fought the Chaos in the last version of this, it's actually been about 20-30 minutes since that clip. I've done a lot of work on the inside. It does feel like the back section is more vulnerable if it's hit from the top, rather than slowly going from the front or going from the side directly. So maybe that will be a good idea. On top of this, this will free up all of this top section for maybe a cram cannon, or, in the form of this thing, we could have a little head section. We could make this look a little bit more like a mech rather than just a turret, and the head, of course, could have all of the detection systems, so that we have a swiveling head on top of the swiveling turret body thing. That might be a good idea. Let's see how it turns out. The large house, the most fearsome of all things in the campaign. Okay, missiles go up, and they set off light, and they come down in an angle. Okay, that's definitely better than firing them directly forwards, and it does have the benefit of being a stationary weapon rather than on a spin block, which of course means it's nice and safe, and it's probably not going to die too easily. The problem is, if we do have it on an angle, it would be better in that the missiles go forwards before activating, so they come down at a sharper angle. The problem with that, spin blocks are bad, spin blocks are very vulnerable. We could, of course, mess around with these ejection options, but they tend to work very badly when they're stationary and very, very compact, like they are here. For instance, this missile will most likely clip that will clip that missile, they'll go all over the place, and it will be difficult to make it reliable. I think leaving it as it is would be better as well, because it means even if there's a target behind us, because they're being thrown directly upwards, they can turn around and then go for the target behind us. If they're being thrown forwards, it could cause problems there. Okay, we're getting there. I've got to say, there is something about watching how sharp this turret is turning, which is really, really satisfying. So, off camera, I've done even more work on the inside of the drone segment, which of course is the turret segment. It now has more ammunition and some regular autoloaders, which means it can fire for far, far longer. I have just been testing for, apparently, according to Fraps, 4.5 minutes, and only now is it showing signs of running out of ammunition, and this is because only the regular autoloaders were then firing. I've also reduced the amount of ammo within the turret and increased the amount of ammo within the Abaddon, or the Skarbrand base. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to name this thing. Right now, Skarbrand is the main name, which of course is a Warhammer 40k reference, but I'm not too sure. Either way, this means that the ammunition from the base can be fed into the turret, which makes the turret less vulnerable, and of course, because of how defensive the Abaddon base is, it won't be too difficult to make sure that doesn't detonate. We still have 400 volume to mess around with on the base, and 350 to mess around with on the top section. which is really weird because of how small the turret looks in comparison to the base, but sadly, the weapons are very, very dense. Starting to run out of space now, but I still want to add some more guns. The main problem is I don't want the turret segment to be vulnerable. Even though the base can heal it, it will cost a fortune to heal with so many weapons inside. So the more weapons we add, which of course are all explosive, the more vulnerable it becomes. I also really dislike how these little side turrets look, so I will be changing those before the finished form. Either way, let's test out these two tiny little cram cannons to see if they even work. Okay, that was my fault. I forgot to change the firing restraints. This needs to be on minimum, so does this. Try again, new house. Also, apparently our tank's going too fast. And will they score a hit this time? Yes, they will. And they're pretty good. They're not fantastic. It's actually a very, very small cram cannon, but it did work. The missiles are a little bit weird though, so we need to work on that as well. Either way though, it's looking pretty darn scary. I am not good at making things look good, so it looks like at the moment almost as if it has two stumpy little amputated arms, which really wasn't the intention. Honestly, I think one of the biggest problems was deciding to go like the Twin Guard and actually try to make it look a little bit mech-like with the head and everything, but yeah, it's not going all that well because I have run out of volume. So I'm going to try again. I'm going to try and separate this a little bit from the body so it looks like it's kind of connecting through the shoulder segments, but it's going to be difficult considering the weapon itself is on the inside in the torso. Really not certain how this is going to work out. It's gonna be a while. Due to time constraints and the fact that I apparently am really bad when it comes to making things actually look like a mech, this is going to be the final form, at least for now. Incredibly chunky and apparently a little bit overweight, this is going to be the Skarbrand turret segment. Two 800mm cram cannons, two 1750 RPM frag advanced cannons, and 2 times 6 pods of cruise missiles. Overall, this thing is going to be able to put out a lot of damage and even tank a lot of damage being taken, meaning if we make a couple of these, it's going to be able to kill pretty much everything. In fact, one thing I do need to do is quickly add fuses to the cram cannons, and then we'll do a quick test against something a little bit scary, and then the top section is pretty much done. I may add some shielding. If I add some batteries, I could siphon energy from the other vehicles, meaning I could add shields to the turret itself, or I may just keep it as it is. From all the tests so far, not one thing has targeted the sub-vehicle. They've all targeted the Abaddon base, so maybe shielding would be a bit of a waste right now, especially with so much heavy armor. And yes, this thing costs an absolute fortune. So I'm going to do some work on the Abaddon. I'm going to put the turret a little bit further forward so it looks a bit more natural, and then fix up some fuses, stuff like that, and then the final test before we call it a day. This has took way too long, and I will make it prettier, but maybe after Christmas. This thing has really, really grew on me, even though it does look a little bit top-heavy. By lowering how high it's held, just by a little bit, it looks amazing when it's fighting something. For instance, like that. And for the first time, I've ran into the issue of I don't have enough stuff to put on the base to justify 2000 volume, so I've started adding spikes. Because I had spare volume. Maybe I'll add a RAM to the front or something, because spare volume. The only thing I need to add still is a couple of smoke dispensers, although that will require a little bit of fuel storage as well. I think that will be worth it. I'm getting happier and happier with this design, even though it's now on hour 5 of building this thing. There we are, that's the thing that was missing. let's add a nice bit of corn to the back of the craft. Although, the more I look at this, the more I realise, now this is more for the 40k nerds out there, well, actually Warhammer in general nerds out there, this would actually work very well as a great unclean one, which is one of the greater demons of Nurgle, the grandfather of plague. Old grandfather Nurgle. Which of course would require a lot of colour changes, but the bloated nature of it and the kind of oversized, just general stature would really, really work. And then I'll probably need loads of little mini drones called Nurglings, and it would be adorable, plaguey, disgusting, and outright amazing. Perhaps something for the future, but for now, we're sticking with our good old Blood God. I think it's time we put this thing through an actual test versus the White Flare Beholder. We now have the smoke dispensers and the laser warners pretty much all over the bottom craft. We have the smoke dispensers, of course, on the inside. We have some spare fuel to actually use the smoke dispensers. I've upped the shield strength again because I had a little bit more space for the steam engines. I've increased the heavy armor pretty much everywhere on the base. And the main turret section, the Skarbrand itself, we now have 1,119mm cram cannons, and I've also upped the fire rate of the miniguns, in addition to making these a little bit more aggressive with an additional warhead. I think that's pretty much everything covered, so, for the sake of fairness, I'm going to save the vehicle, just to make sure things don't crash, and then spawn it near the resource zone, since that normally is a pretty good spot to spawn enemies in as well, using the just basic spawner, rather than me having to do everything manually, because that's just too much effort. Also, this is called Scar Turret now. I don't know why, but I find that adorable. And so the test can begin, and I've decided, as a bit of a change of mind, to fight against the Chaos for this one and final test. After this lovely vehicle will be spawned into the campaign, after a few minor tweaks depending on how this test goes. Originally I was going to fight the Beholder, but the Chaos has heavy armor on the inside and less shielding. It's definitely a better target in terms of just sheer damage over time. Now, one thing to note is that the detection systems are currently not online, so I've turned on the automatic detection system, which is in the options, which means it's not customizable, so the aim of this robot isn't something we're testing. It may be really off, or it may be godly accurate. It can vary quite a lot. Okay, the Chaos is spawned in, spawning over here, and let's see how this goes. As I was saying, the aim isn't what we're testing here, thankfully, because that is really bad. As soon as it starts chasing properly, it's going to take all of that damage. There we go, look at that, just chunks flying absolutely everywhere. And it's dead. Really? Okay! So many shots, it actually cut all the way through and completely killed it. Didn't expect that. After a few more rather boring tests versus houses and everything else stationary, my final conclusion is that this craft is going to do very well, but there are a few things I need to change. The advanced cannons are working perfectly, as I would expect, considering they are a stationary and more powerful version of the Bloodletters. The cram cannons are good enough, though not particularly great. They are also very, very cheap and very, very small, so that little bit of extra damage I'm sure will come in handy at some point. It also looks nice to have the additional weaponry. The missiles need to be changed. They are not working as intended right now, although they do hit the target a lot of the time, they are not reliable enough. So either I have to mess around with a one turn, or perhaps adding extra fins, or throwing them forwards, or shooting them at an angle. One of these should cause them to be a bit more reliable and hit the target at closer quarters. At the moment, if the enemy is far enough away, they do still hit, but if they're too close, then they simply fail. As you can see, if they're far enough away, they're fine. Well, actually, yeah, just about fine. They do find the target, but that one would have never hit if the target was within this range, so clearly not reliable enough. Although they are very, very cool being shot like that. Either way though, thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the video, then of course, likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly, shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. The next episode may be a bit delayed, depending on when you are seeing this video. If this video is out on Thursday for British time, then there's a good chance the next episode won't come out until after Christmas. The reason being, I am leaving on Friday for a Christmas holiday, spending the week with my family and friends, and because of that, I probably haven't got enough time to record and edit another From the Depths video. If you're seeing this on Wednesday, there's a chance it might be out on the weekend because I've edited it and uploaded it on Friday. Though I will try regardless when you see this, but don't be alarmed if there is a delay in videos. There will be a vlog up soon, or a blog or whatever, saying that I will be gone over Christmas, so expect delays on videos and such. Either way, thank you for watching, hope you have enjoyed, and goodbye. The Skarbrand will soon grace the campaign.